Welcome to Tradesmen Enterprises. The following orientation will give you an overview of our safety procedures and policies. First, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. In the event of an emergency, call 911. Notify the dispatcher, the safety coordinator, or any superintendent that's on site at the mod yard. Our muster point is at the main gate where you came in. Some of the rules and expectations for this orientation are to pay attention. There is valuable information in this orientation. Be sure to ask questions of the person that's conducting the orientation with you, and please no cell phones. This orientation will run from 1 to 6 hours and is delivered in 5 parts. First, take some time to read through the handbook. Then we're going to go through the paperwork, review some of our policies as well as your rights and responsibilities. Then we'll do a review. WMIS, which will be applicable to most of you. And then finally, PST or CSTS. If you already have a PSTS or CSTS ticket that's valid, then you won't have to do this last part. You may also have to do one of our client orientations. On the first page, fill in your name and contact information. We must have an emergency contact number for you. Include any equipment that you've operated, and also check off whether or not you're an apprentice and at which level you're at. Finally, leave the bottom half blank, but be sure to review with the dispatcher before leaving. In the employee files, the next pages 2 through 5 will be the tax forms. Contractors can ignore this slide, but for the employees, fill in the top part of the form. We must have a mailing address for you, as well as your SIN number just for payroll purposes. In most cases, the number in box number 1 can be filled in box number 13. There are 2 forms, both federal and provincial, and we do need both. Please sign the last page of both pages, and if you have any questions, you can ask myself or HR. Turn to the next page in your orientation package. For employees, this will be pages 6 and 7. Enter your name, your position, and today's date. And as we're going through this, please initial every line. We're going to review some of the safe work practices and procedures, the PPE, the rules, and then finally, the next page is a review with some checkboxes. Please be sure to sign and date both pages. Let's start with the health and safety policies. If you turn to page 2 of your handbook, you'll see the Petroleum Industry Guiding Principles for Worker Safety. This is broken down into 4 main parts. First is responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility to promote health and safety at the workplace, to work in a safe manner, and to refuse unsafe work. Safety, of course, is a priority. We want to make sure that everyone gets home safely every night. Recognition. Often these days, contractors and companies with the best safety records are the ones that are getting the most work. And continuous improvement. This is something that we believe in strongly at Tradesmen, to continuously improve as individuals and as an organization to get better every day. At Tradesmen, our policy is to conduct all operations safely and take all practical steps to build and maintain a safe and healthy place of work. We show our commitment to health and safety by promoting our apprenticeship program for all tradespeople, practicing continuous on-the-job training, encouraging all people to develop as tradespeople and professionals, offering open and confidential communication tools for ideas and concerns, taking the time for daily, weekly, and monthly safety meetings, monitoring work practices and inspecting work sites, and holding management, supervisors, workers, and contractors accountable. Now let's look at some rights and responsibilities. As an employer, as far as it is reasonably practicable or reasonably feasible, we are responsible to ensure that all workers are aware of their responsibilities and ensure the health and safety of workers and non-workers present at a worksite. Employees' responsibilities and contractor responsibilities are as far as reasonably practicable to take responsible care to protect other workers and themselves, to cooperate with the employer for protecting health and safety, and refusing unsafe work. Put differently, a tradesman as a worker or contractor, you have the right to refuse unsafe work, the right to participate in safety meetings and in the health and safety program, and the right to know about the hazards that may affect you. You also have the responsibility to report any unsafe acts and conditions, as well as incidents immediately, to participate and attend meetings, as well as to offer suggestions. You're responsible to ask questions. And again, refer back to the Occupational Health and Safety Act for further information. Now let's talk about workers' compensation, known commonly as WCB. Workers' compensation is in place for all employees at tradesmen. For contractors, they must carry their own WCB coverage and provide a clearance letter before going to work. This clearance letter must include personal coverage from themselves or the directors of the organization. You may also need worker coverage if you have employees that work for your company. All workers, employees, and contractors have a responsibility to report any injury or illness to the employer. All injuries must be reported as soon as possible. Always be sure to report an incident or injury to your supervisor, as well as make sure that the health and safety manager know. You may have to fill out a worker report form with a statement, and this is something that I can help you with. At Tradesmen, we do have a return to work or modified work program. We have various levels of light and moderate duty so that you can continue working and earning while you're healing up before going back to full duties. Now let's take a look at hazard assessments. This is arguably the most important thing that you'll have to do each day. All companies want to minimize hazards at the workplace, and we need your help to identify and control them. Common sources of hazards at the workplace include workplace activities, tools, vehicles, heavy equipment, the environmental conditions, and potential human error. To conduct a hazard assessment, consider some of the sources of hazards that I just mentioned. Assess the potential, such as the length and exposure of the injury. Report anything that you feel is unsafe to your supervisor, and ensure that hazards are adequately discussed in a tailgate meeting. Ask questions and ensure that controls are put in place. Hazard controls fall into three main categories and are listed in the order of their importance. The first are engineering controls. These are systems that are built to minimize hazards, or protective mechanisms or barriers. These can include guards on grinders or welding screens. The next are administrative controls. This orientation is an administrative control. It can include any instruction for a task, training, signage, caution ribbon, anything administrative put in place to help control a hazard. Finally, there's personal protective equipment, or PPE. This is commonly called the last line of defense. PPE will never stop an incident from happening, but it will just prevent harm from being worse. There are 6 main types of hazards. There are physical hazards, anything that can cause physical harm, like injuries and cuts. There are chemical hazards. Those are hazards that you deal with when using hazardous materials, like toxic substances. Environmental hazards, caused by working in extreme temperatures. Noise can be included as an environmental hazard. Additional and commonly overlooked types of hazards are ergonomic hazards, caused by repetitive motion, cramped workspaces, or improper lifting. Biological hazards, caused by infectious diseases or they can also include bites from insects that spread disease.
HR is the organizational function that deals with any issues related to people. These are things such as compensation, apprenticeships, wellness, benefits, employee motivation, communication, and training. Overall, this position is here to help you. Please feel free to contact the Human Resource Coordinator at any time with questions or concerns. Benefits are offered to all tradesmen employees. The application form, which you can see at the top right, needs to be filled out and signed if you wish to receive benefits. It is suggested that you take advantage of these benefits. However, there is a waiver form if you do not want them. At Tradesmen Enterprises, we want to help you advance in your career. If you are working under a journeyman, we can help you get signed up as an apprentice, or if you are already an apprentice, a transfer card can be filled out and we can continue to help you achieve your career goals. We think it is important that our employees know that Tradesmen values training and that we will try our best to help you become a journeyman. For any questions or concerns on apprentices, contact the HR coordinator at hr@teigp.com.
In most cases, you'll require a hard hat, steel-toe boots, reflective stripes, as well as safety glasses, and when needed, face shields and welding helmets. On many of our sites, be prepared to have FR clothing or FR coveralls, as well as gloves and earplugs. Occasionally, specialty PPE is needed, for example, stainless steel welding. It's required that we wear respirators. And on some of our work sites, we have personal LEL monitors that you can sign out and return on a daily basis. For other company policies, refer to the last page in the handbook for the list of rules. Our toolbox or tailgate meetings are daily, and on many of our large projects we have weekly meetings. There are also monthly meetings at the shop or on site. As mentioned earlier, all incidents, accidents, near misses must be reported immediately. Report everything to superintendents. There's nothing insignificant. And if you're not comfortable talking to a superintendent, you can also inform either HR, senior management, or myself, the health and safety manager, for any issues. It's important to know the Emergency Response Plan, or ERP, for every job that you're on. Review the shop ERP here. Again, the emergency number is 911. Know where your muster points are. For remote sites, we will have an assigned STARS number. Always call 1-888-888-4567 or pound 4567 from your cell phone. Review the site ERP often and get a copy from your supervisor. For contractors, the first aid requirements for your truck are to have an Alberta number 2 first aid kit or a BC level 1, a 20-pound fire extinguisher, and roadside reflective triangles. Read through the bottom paragraph on this page and then sign and date. If there's anything that you'd like explained further, ask the health and safety manager, the person conducting your orientation, or any other available manager. We can answer your questions. Ensure that every line has been initialed and then flip to the next one. On this page, we're just going to do a review. Check these off as we go down. So we talked about proper PPE. Having a hard hat, steel-toe boots, and glasses are the bare minimum for every location. As well, you should have reflective striping and gloves and hearing protection. Also specialty PPE. On most sites, be prepared to be clean-shaven, and for some of our job sites, hoodies are not permitted. Often there's a safe work permit before going to work, and there's a permitting system for any critical task like ground disturbance or confined space. Make sure that you know your health and safety responsibilities. Know where your muster point, the star site number, and you're familiar with the ERP. Make sure that you're assessing hazards every day using those field level hazard assessment cards. Again, we have a modified work policy. Have another look at the NFORM guiding principles. Remember your 3 OH&S responsibilities and rights: the right to refuse, the right to know, and the right to participate. On many of our jobs, pre-access drug testing is required. Additionally, we do post-incident drug testing. Again, on the last page of your handbook are the rules. Ask the orientation person or the dispatcher what the required safety tickets are for your job site. And finally, if you want to be added to our approved drivers list, talk to the dispatcher and he'll have you fill out a form and we can get you a driver's abstract and add it to the list. Ensure that everything on this page is checked off and then sign and date. Have another look through your package and ensure that everything is filled out and signed. Remember, we need a void check. Make sure that we have a copy of your safety, apprenticeship, or journeyman tickets, that all the forms are filled out and signed by the orientation person also. Again, tax forms have to be filled out for the employees, and for contractors, we need to have a copy of your commercial liability insurance, your vehicle insurance, as well as your WCB and GST numbers. Take an invoice checklist with you, and this document will tell you what to have on each and every one of your invoices to make sure that it's processed quickly. You can also ask myself for digital invoice templates so you can do invoices on the computer. Ask the person doing your orientation if there's anything else you need. Should you get a copy of the ERP or map to site right now? Does the site have a clean shaven or no hoodie policy? And ask what tickets are required. For tradesmen, the tickets required are H2S Alive, WMIS, and either PST or CSTS. Additionally, we strongly recommend that you have first aid. Is there any special PPE or clothing that you'll need? Ask what the name of the superintendent is for the site that you're going to, and or if you need any other supplies. In addition to this orientation, there are other safety information resources available to you. There's the company handbook, which you should be holding right now, the Tradesman Health and Safety Manual. Every superintendent has a copy of this manual, and the Occupational Health and Safety Acts, Regulation, and Code. You can ask anyone that has a computer on your site to access our server. All of this information is also available to you online. This concludes the first part of this orientation. We're going to continue on to the WMIS section, but before we do so, do you have any questions or comments? Feel free to call me at any time. My number. And now let's move on to WMIS. What is WMIS? WMIS stands for Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System. It's a Canadian system meant to protect the health and safety of workers by providing the necessary information about hazardous materials. This is part of the right to know. While WMIS is a Canadian system, it's provincially legislated. In Alberta, you can find WMIS in the Occupational Health and Safety Code under Part 29. There are three main parts to WMIS. First, there are labels, which identify the product and provide basic information. Training, sort of what we're doing right now, providing instruction to all workers on how to use the WMIS system. And finally, MSDSs, or Material Safety Data Sheets. These contain the detailed information about products that you use. When it comes to labeling, there are two main types. There's the supplier labels, which are placed on a product by the manufacturer, and they contain 7 pieces of basic information: the product identifier, or the name, the supplier identifier, or who made it, an MSDS statement. It'll contain a hazard symbol, which we'll get into, as well as any risk phrases and precautionary measures to take when using it, and finally first aid measures. If you have to pour the product into a smaller container, that's when you have to create a workplace label. Workplace labels have 3 pieces of information: the product identifier, the name of the product, the precautionary measures, and just a statement telling the reader that an MSDS sheet is available. How can you protect yourself? Well, you can watch carefully for hazard labels. Read the MSDSs to learn about the proper handling and precautionary measures for every product that you use. Handle products in the recommended way, and tell your supervisor about any unsafe condition or ask if you have any questions. As well, pay close attention to any WHMIS or dangerous goods training or information provided by your employer. Here are the hazard symbols, and they are broken down into 6 different classes. Class A are compressed gases. Welders are very familiar with these, with oxygen and acetylene. Class B are flammables, like gasoline. Class C are oxidizers, or accelerants to an existing fire. Class D1, the skull and crossbones, are materials that are immediately poisonous. They will hurt you right now. Class D2 are called toxic other. They look like the T symbol. And these are products that will hurt you later on. Examples of these could include silica sand or asbestos. For tradesmen, when we do stainless steel welding, the particulate dust and fumes that come from stainless steel welding could be classified under an other toxic hazard, which is why you have to wear a respirator. Class D3 are biohazards. You don't see these too often in tradesmen, but you'll see it in hospitals. Class E are corrosives. An example of this would be a pipe inhibitor for our pipeliners. And then Class F for reactive materials. And these are materials that can react violently if agitated. As mentioned, each worker has the right to know, but also a responsibility to do the following: learn how to use WHMIS, accept and review information on hazardous materials, follow procedures to protect themselves and others, and inform us, or their supervisor, of any hazards or damaged or missing labels on hazardous products. The last part to WHMIS are MSDSs, or Material Safety Data Sheets. Federal law requires that if someone drops off a product at our worksite, they have to provide us an MSDS. Alberta employers must have an MSDS for each hazardous material available for examination by the workers. We have MSDS manuals and an MSDS list on our server that's available to you. At a minimum, there have to be 9 sections on an MSDS, but usually there are 16 sections. Not all MSDSs look the same, but they will all have the same information. On a 16-section MSDS, the breakdown goes like this. Section 1 is the name and the company who makes it. Section 2 is the composition. For water, it would be H2O. 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. Section 3 is the hazard ID, saying how specifically it can hurt you. Section 4 are first aid. Section 5 is firefighting. Section 6 is what to do if there's an accidental release. Section 7 talks about handling the product. And Section 8 talks about exposure, or the PPE that you'll have to wear when you're using it. Section 9 will be physical or chemical properties, whether it's normally in a solid liquid gas state, and what the melting, freezing, or flash point is. Section 10 is reactivity. Section 11 is toxicology, and this will tell you how toxic the product is, and what it can do if you're exposed. Section 12 is ecological information. Section 13 is disposal. 14 is transportation. Section 15 is some regulatory information. And Section 16 is just classified as other. This concludes the Tradesmen Orientation. It's time for a quiz. Thank you for your listening.